Welcome back. This is Robin Minds. Before we went on the break, we had a very exclusive interview with Pretty Mike. It was quite light-hearted and entertaining. And as well, we just sort of discussed very important societal topics like skin bleaching, amongst other things. And right now, we want to talk about our nation, our dear country, Nigeria. Arise, O compatriots. Nigeria calls, obey. It's so easy to obey. It's so easy to be patriotic when the system favors you. But with a dwindling economy, lack of jobs, a very bad healthcare system, just like Chinua Achebe would say, it looks like things are falling apart and the center can no longer hold. And the question on many people's mind is, can Nigeria still succeed? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? How can we get ourselves out of the situation that we've found ourselves in? It's been 6 decades and about 3 years since we got our independence. What do we have to show for it? There's a particular line in our national anthem that says that may the labors of our heroes past not be in vain. The labor of our heroes past, has it been in vain? With me to discuss how Project Nigeria can succeed is an activist and a lawyer, Timi Olagunju. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I feel very emotional every single time I talk about this country because it seems like the story never changes from dispensation to dispensation. How can the leaders truly recognize that we are different tribes, different cultures, all living together as one? How can leaders truly prioritize that our uniqueness in our diversity and make it a strength as opposed to making it what divides us?
That's a deep-rooted question. And to give, a straightforward answer is as difficult as the question itself. But I will start with the fact that, if the foundation be destroyed, what can the makeup artist do than put powder, right? And so the foundation of the country itself needs a proper rejig. And when I talk about the foundation, I'm not just talking about the concept of restructuring, the concept of true federalism, fiscal federalism, and all that. I'm also talking of the concept of the foundation of the minds of those who present themselves for leadership. Those who forget history are doomed to repeat same. And so you remember that in 1999, a lot of pro-democratic forces didn't quickly come out to run for political office. In 1999, you had a lot of them overseas enjoying, the grandiose that came with being abroad after all the struggle they've gone through, which is quite befitting. But that very era where you had a lot of pro-democratic forces and a lot of middle-class Nigerians, educated, enlightened Nigerians, refrained from joining the political force itself, created that room for the kind of crop of politicians that we currently have in scale to kind of pervade the environment. And so those crop of politicians are like ants. They've seen that politics itself has a lot of pecs, what I call sugar. When ants see sugar, it gravitates towards it. So they keep, and what you promote is what becomes popular. So there's been a consistent culture of promoting that mindset, foundationally, that politics is for the sake of power to get pecs. And that is what has pervaded the atmosphere. And truly, I tell you, if a nation does not, until one generation masters politics for development, the next generation cannot build innovation at scale.
That is very deep. That is very deep. So where do we go from here? I think you've already established it that the crop of politicians that we have now are the ones that prioritize their personal gains over the people.
Yes, it's clear.
Right? So how can we destroy this foundation and rebuild? And by destroy, I mean this figuratively. I'm talking about the mindset of the people. How can we deal with this ideology?
Your questions are deep today, Hero. Well, the truth about it is culture, not politics, determines the success of any nation. But politics can change a culture and deliver it from itself, right? And so the logic there is this. When you look at biology, for example, during the corona crisis, you see that when they wanted to develop vaccine, they had to extract that virus and then culture that virus and prepare that virus for the human body to fight the anticipated corona attack. And so that same method of nature is what can be applied, where certain persons must be willing to join the political fray and understand how it works, enough not to be violated by it, and enough to understand that the slogan, if you cannot beat them, join them, is false. If you cannot beat them, then find a way to understand how they beat others so you can beat them at it. I think that's the proper thing to do. Because what we see now is that because there's a beehive of people that do not take development at the forefront, when a few people get into the political space, whether as special advisors or ministers, they don't get to do much because the corruption that they are fighting will fight back at them. And so you need a beehive, a larger structure of people that understand the political fray and have an intention to serve based on what I call the law of legacy, which is simple. Those who are faithful over little, let much be delivered unto their hands. We've seen a lot of people that do not fulfill that principle. They've not been faithful over the little, or we've not even seen them serve in little, but we've placed big things into their hands. How do they deliver? Nemo that quod non albeit. You cannot give what you do not have.
Okay, just so that this is as clear as possible, because sometimes when we are all carried away, certain things come off as ambiguous, right? You did make a point where you said that there have been some people that got into the government with good intentions, but eventually they had to join the system. I don't know. Can you give us an example?
Hero, you're putting me in a very, very tight corner. You and I know.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't
you and
have
I
to
know
be,
the examples.
It doesn't have to be the present government. It doesn't have to be officials in the present government.
You and I have examples. People like Mama Obi apparently had very good intentions, but came to realize some weeks ago, she said it herself, that, they were acting as technocrats in government rather than stay in government to understand the political fray. Because when you're in politics, it is not just about governance, it's also about politics, human interests, the psychology of being. And so it's very important to understand that fray. But I think that going forward, we have people like Oweke Jr., who, sound people, who get almost swallowed by the system and almost give up. But for the consistency to push off, that's what it is. However, what I think institutions that promote democracy do, because democracy cannot bat good governance on its own. Democracy must have frameworks that builds generation politically to deliver good governance. And look at countries like Singapore, the United States. They have a fellowship internship program that is sponsored by the states, whether at the local level, that's the county level, whether at the state level, whether at the federal level. How many people have been privileged to even understand the workings of the National Assembly as young people, even the workings of Aso Rock? How many people have a 3D picture of what the Aso Rock looks like? Right? I think that's an idea the current administration to take into cognizance, because do a 3D simulation of Aso Rock. Let people have that experience of Aso Rock. That's how it starts. When you start to open the physical structures of governance to young people that are distinguished across communities in Nigeria, you create a National Assembly Fellowship Program, you create an House of Assembly Fellowship Program, you create a Governorship Fellowship Program, you create a Local Government Fellowship or Internship Program. 3 months, based on merit, handled by the private sector, select distinguished young people that have done so well for themselves, and then bring them into understanding the governance structure. I'm a beneficiary of one, which was organized in the US for a program I did in Nigeria. In 2015, I became a Mandela Washington Fellowship under a program created by President Barack Obama. for work I was doing in Nigeria. What was the work I was doing? I started in Oyo State then, Youth in Motion. And what we did was simple. We looked for primary schools, secondary schools. I'm a product of public secondary school.
Yeah.
So we take public secondary schools kids and take them to the House of Assembly or your states to observe parliamentary sittings. Interestingly, the tremendous effect has been superb. Sometimes, you know, when I go to Ibadan and I'm walking around and some kids will just come to meet me and say, Mr. Olagunju, the program that you created, that you do, had tremendously transformed the way I think.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is to ensure that their fundings, the current budget, the next budget for 2024 should incorporate bonding. This is a challenge to the National Assembly. To incorporate fundings that creates fellowships and internship program for distinguished young people to understand the governance process and also be able to add value. Because there's a disconnect between the young people and the current structure of politicians. And it's wrong.
And it's also very sad that even the educational system, it's not being prioritized in that regard, you know, in terms of enlightening the young people about what's the Nigerian dream should be. You know, if you go to America, you see young people say, oh, God bless America. How many people wake up in the country and say, God bless Nigeria?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, we're going to get back to that, but I also need us to talk about something really important, which is one of the biggest barriers that we have in this country, religion. We seem to be divided amongst religious line. How can we make that particular line almost inexistent? Hero,
they say you come today. I saw the way you were asking these pretty mic questions, deep questions. You know, in line with that question, religion is a very deep-rooted thing. But I just want to take us back to a book written by a political scientist called Eke. He talked about something called the two publics. And he talked about the primordial publics, that's religion, sentiment, ethnicity. Now my papa, compound, bonam, now my brother, now my sister, now my village man, you know, primordial publics. Now the same church where they go, now the same mosque where they worship, you know, primordial publics. And then civic publics, that's the national interest. He now said societies that would ever develop are societies that have taken on much more a higher ranking of civic public against primordial public. So a society where you see a lot of primordial, for instance, Americans, irrespective of religion or whatsoever, when it comes to America, everybody shouts, oh, one America. You know, irrespective of political interest, whether Republicans or Democrats.
Yeah.
You know, so it's quite interesting in that sense. And that is it. For a country like Nigeria, for us to ensure that we drive development, it's not just about economics and all that. It's also about culture. Culture is the way of life of a people. Does our culture, nuances, and mindset promote civic public against primordial public? That's the core thing. And the way to promote that is it's as simple as ABC. Societies that were born to be developed today and are developing, they were not just born, you know, with civic public. There are certain things they do. One, what you promote is what becomes popular. And the best time to promote those kind of things, from what we've understood in Youth in Motion and with some of the projects we've done, is when they are children. When your children, you start putting it in their minds. The Greek did it. They started creating fictitious stories of heroes that made the Greek people feel like, oh, they were above other people in that sense. And that, you know, Athens was, you know, the beacon of civilization. They created those stories. Some of us started learning those stories. So those who forget history are doomed to repeat same. I think it's important that we start from restoring history significantly into our curriculum at primary schools. First. Second, ensure that the kind of civic education that we do is not the civic education that we just, you know, do civic social studies in class, but the civic education where the Ministry of Education mandates and the National Orientation Agency mandates that children are also taken to places of governance. governor's office, House of Assembly to observe parliamentary sittings, and things of that nature, which does a certain thing in their mind, it starts to reorientate them towards the reality that there's a connection between governance and their livelihood. So we have to start early on, otherwise we are just joking. Otherwise, we keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over again over the next 100 years.
Now let's get to the streets. And the reason why I said let's get to the streets is, by the streets I refer to the common man. The common man is so uninspired. Right now, the common man is so unpatriotic. How can we inspire patriotism again? How?
It's quite understandable when people are uninspired. Because I would also ask myself, am I really even inspired? Some of us are so Nigerian that anywhere we travel to, we carry Nigeria on our head. Only just, for us not to have changed our surname to Nigeria. So, but the interesting thing is that, are we inspired at this time? You can see my outfit. It has everything Nigerian in it. But are we so inspired at this time? The answer is no. I saw a recent research that was released that said Nigerians are somewhat the happiest people. That research needs to be looked into. But I think the perspective of that research might have been that people are content. Nigerians are largely teachable people, right? So, that being said, indeed, there is call for being uninspired. And it's simple. When you look at it, Maslow's hierarchy of need, what is the state of feeding for Nigerians? What is the state of shelter for Nigerians? What is the state of clothing for Nigerians? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, let's not even go into other psychological and other needs that are met, which makes a lot of people to jack back because people feel that they can do much more, but there's no industrial environment to do much more. The culture, for example, is a culture of servitude. I wonder what the Ministry of Labor is doing about how businesses treat staff. That's also a key part of it because people spend a large part of their lives in offices. So there should be, a certain serenity, sanity in the workplace to ensure productivity. Have you discovered that countries with the greatest innovation, Scandinavian countries, Sweden, name those countries, have discovered that it is not how much you work that makes people productive. They actually have a work strategy of 4 days per week. Countries like Sweden, countries like Finland, some of the most innovative countries in the world, they have a culture of 4 days work per week and 6 hours, 7 hours work per day.
Over here is almost 12 hours, 7 days, 6 days. Because
you can't build innovation. And the great Howell made mention of something. When it comes to innovation, I read somewhere where it talked about, that's Obafemi Awolowo, late Chief Obafemi. Very fantastic point, but people don't look at it. Nutrition, for example, right? It connected the capacity for people to take a certain calorie daily and how that helps them to be more innovative. Such that if the country can create a policy that ensures that certain calories are taken of protein per day by citizens, particularly by children in school, where it's easily enforceable, what then happens is that it increases the capacity for innovation because when a certain level of protein is not available in the body, it also has a way of inhibiting your capacity to think creatively. As simple as that is, but most people would not read things like that to understand. That's why I said that our leaders are prepared to eat and eat and eat. They are not prepared for legacy. They're not prepared for the reality that 50, 100 years from now, will their names be mentioned for good? Or will their names not even be mentioned at all? Or will their names be mentioned for evil? Legacy. We don't have that culture. When you ask an average primary or secondary school kid, while they are actually, they want to go into politics, they tell you the reason why. What you promote is what becomes popular. So the basic hierarchy of needs, and let me thank God President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is president. And I'm going to put it to him, simple. I remembered in 2004, 2005, he visited University of Ibadan. I was at the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan. That's over how many years ago? 2004, 2005. And he made mention of something at the lecture he delivered, that development is when the market woman on the streets is happy that she has food on her table, shelter over her roof, and clothing to wear. When you don't need big grammar to know whether there's development or not. Just go and ask the average Nigerian, in quotes, the market woman and the likes, right? And they will tell you whether there is progress or not. I challenge Mr. President to take on that mantle of going to ask the market women on the street. He might do a disguise and ask whether his policies have brought in development or hardship to Nigerians, so that his advisors do not keep praising him as sycophant and scalawants. And that's the challenge with the Nigerian states. People not speaking truth to power. People acting as sycophants and scalawants because of their personal aggrandise, still personal interests. That's the culture. But that was not the culture pre-colonialism.
So you're saying that Nigeria is not better off pre-colonial time than it is now?
Well, in certain stances, you and I know, Hero, that the village life where, you tap palm wine with your chest bare open, sort of provided them some comfort. And some of them lived really long. What is the average age of the Nigerian now? The average age of a Nigerian, you'll be shocked that the average age of someone in Niger Republic is actually higher than the average life expectancy of a Nigerian. That shocked you. That's the reality.
Why is that?
A couple of factors, basic needs. Then also, I think there's something we need to address in the health challenge, which I think the Ministry of Health needs to take cognizance of. And I remembered watching the interview where the Minister for State for Health mentioned that he's going to do an active effort at ensuring that NAFDAC does a very serious regulatory work. There's a lot of fake drug going. You, my brother, can count how many people are taking fake malaria drugs that had caused their demise. We need to work towards ensuring that the life of Nigerian matters. It's not everything that should be imported. Just free flow. It's human life. Nobody is Mario in Nigeria that has 7 lives. Neither will Luigi. It's just one life. We need to take it seriously.
That is absolutely true. So I'll just allow you to make a closing statement on how projects in Nigeria can truly work.
You see, Project Nigeria first. Many people will argue with you, is there really a Project Nigeria? I think that the foundations of equity and justice must prevail for there to be a common goal. When you have a society where injustice is perceivably seen to have been done. In other words, justice must not just be done, but must be evidently seen to be done by everyone. A society where there's a lack of justice, there seems to be some level of marginalization. That society, firstly, cannot have what we call a project. So Project Nigeria can only work when Nigerians, whether Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, I'm Yoruba, but sometimes people think I'm Igbo. It tells you that we're already intertwined. Ibibio, right? Kanuri, and everyone sees a sense of justice and equality in the system, whether in terms of appointments, whether in terms of distribution of a common resource and welfare of the Nigerian people. That's it. And I think one of the key things is this. God himself, I think our Nigerian government needs to learn from God. God himself delegates. You see this current structure where the president is all-knowing and is in charge of so many things. We need to dismantle that structure in a way that will restructure Nigeria. And the states and local government can serve the people better than they are currently doing.
All
That's
right.
what I think.
Thank you so very much, Timmy, for coming on the program.
Thank you, Iro.
I am truly inspired by your words, and I'm sure that millions of people watching are also inspired.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
end this program with this. Nigeria is our country. We do not have any other country to call our own. And I have seen the power of coming together. We've done it with music. You know, when you listen to music, nobody is saying this is Yoruba music, or this is Igbo music, or this is Hausa music. We are all chanting for our representatives, the top three, Burna Boy, Wizkid, Davido, irrespective of where they come from. I've seen the power of unity, and I truly believe that this nation can still come together, irrespective of the people that are in power, because power truly belongs to the people. So, once the people wake up, I believe that everything that we've ever dreamed of will come to pass. I'll see you next week.
Give me some reaction, I just wanna you. Girl, I like the way you move, really wanna get with you. Don't just stand there teasing me.